Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Board Game Buffet podcast, episode number 98. Yeah, 98. Yes.
98. Yeah.
Sorry. I think I had to just thinking it was 98 or 99. So my name is Dean.
And this is Graham.
And Graham, I know this is a big day in the Anderson household. The number one son, the prodigal son, the future of all of Canada is turning the big 1-7. One more year, and it's a set of luggage, and he's out the door. Empty nesters. Oh, the thought of it. Would you be excited about being an empty nester, or you don't care?
It doesn't matter to me. I only have, the one son or one child. So it's not like I have a house full of kids. And it's not like it's chaos all the time. He's pretty low key. So I don't think there'd be a lot of difference. I mean, we don't see him anyway. He's a 17-year-old boy that lives in the basement on his PS5. I see him at dinner time, and that's it.
Yeah. So we only have the two kids, and, Nolan is out of the house, and Reagan is probably like Gareth. We rarely see her, but I saw Amy sent me a picture of someone had posted on Facebook or something that they had a sign in their front yard. It said, expecting 0 kids in 2021 or something like that. And I thought, I love my kids, obviously. And, if I could wrap them in bubble wrap and protect them forever, I would. But at the same time, the idea of not having any kids at home, if I could get rid of the kids and the pets, oh man. I mean, not that I'm home that much, but the thought of it is, when I am home.
and the wife and the obligations and the job, it'd be perfect.
Yeah. I mean, if I could just, I got 3 of the lottery numbers the other day. I just can't squeeze out those other 3. So I don't know. I'll just have to keep working at it. But well, that's good. I hope you guys have a good birthday celebration with the family and everything. I'm like most gamers, they always try to use those events to maybe get a game played, but I'm assuming that's not going to be on the agenda with your parents and brother and family and all that kind of stuff. So
his actual birthday was during the week. So the day we're recording is the birthday party with the family. So I said, you can have whatever you want for dinner on your birthday. I can make something for you. You can order something, go out, grab something, whatever. So he wants pizza. I said, okay. And normally the place that we order pizza from is like you buy 2 pizzas with 6 toppings and you got a deal on it. So that's what we normally do. So he's so used to just ordering his 3 toppings. So I said, you get your own pizza, get whatever size you want, get whatever toppings you want, whatever
look
else.
At you, Daddy Warbucks.
Yeah. So what does he do? He orders exactly the same pizza as he always does and just gets extra cheese on it. That was his splurge. It was the extra cheese.
So what are his go-to toppings?
From this place, it is mushrooms, pepperoni, and bacon.
Okay. I'm not much of a bacon person on pizza, but I know some people like it. That's just not something we would normally get. I always like to get the Italian sausage, pepperoni, and mushrooms are good, and maybe some green peppers. If I'm getting one just for myself, I'll get green olives on it because I like that saltiness. Yeah. But Amy doesn't really like them on there. And some places, depending on where you're at in the country, you can't get green olives. You can only get black olives, and they're okay. But I'd rather go without olives than go with black olives. But yeah, I like that. When I was a kid, my dad would always get just pepperoni and green olives. And man, the saltiness of that combination on the pizza, awesome.
It's funny because we used to order from Boston Pizza. Do you guys have Boston Pizza down there?
Not to my knowledge.
It's a Canadian chain called Boston Pizza, but they have a pizza that actually has shrimp on it. So that used to be one of Gareth's favorite. Gareth loves all seafood. All seafood. He could eat seafood every single day of his life and be absolutely happy. He loves seafood. So he used to order the pizza with the shrimp on it. So when we started going other places, he's like, well, can I get shrimp on my pizza? It's like, well, I've only ever seen that at Boston Pizza. No other place I've ever seen to have shrimp on pizza. Yeah,
I'm trying to think. I mean, most pizza places where you're ordering online, picking it up, I haven't seen that. Now, if you go to, the kind of the fancy pizza places, the wood fire, the coal fired, I guess I've never looked for it. Maybe they have a seafood pizza. I could see maybe like a crab meat on a pizza. but I don't think I've seen shrimp. I don't know. Anyways, sounds good. I mean, it's only 8:30 in the morning my time, but now I'm hungry for. I did actually make a pizza the other day because I hadn't had it since I've been on the road, and I didn't want to order one. Well, take that back. Amy and I went to Mellow Mushroom and had pizza the one night when she was here, but I haven't really looked at them because I don't have an oven. I just have my air fryer and stuff, but my air fryer also bakes. So I thought, well, I'll buy a pizza and I'll just cut it in half while it's frozen, and maybe I get half of it in. So I got out of the freezer and I was looking, I'm like, it wasn't like one of those super huge ones. I mean, it was kind of like, I guess you'd say a medium-sized pizza, but actually the whole thing fit right in my air fryer. And I was able to cook it all at one time, which wasn't necessarily a good thing because then I ate it all at one time too. But it was, I mean, it was a Paul Newman's brand. I mean, it wasn't anything special, but it was a thin crust. But yeah, I was just excited to be able to fit it in my air fryer.
Yeah. You're now officially a chef, professional chef.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all right. Yeah, it was it was something different. I mean, I tend to get in a rut when I'm on the road cooking.
Yeah.
I make the same stuff like over and over again. But well, I'd said a while ago, I think I told you a story how Amy had brought up about had I ever heard of the game Catan, and some family she follows on social media, they must have talked about how much they love playing it, the influencers. And so I found a copy, I bought it, still haven't gotten her to play it, but I did purchase it. So I don't know if it was last week or the beginning of this week, she sent me a text. I was asking her about, did my package ever arrive? And the games that I ordered before I came down here, so over 2 months ago, finally arrived on my doorstep after a couple of final nasty emails that I sent to the to the company that I ordered them from. So they did arrive, and then she's like, "Oh, by the way," so she sent me the link, and it was about Wingspan, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "Sheikh, have you heard of this?" I'm like, "Yes." Sheikh, well, they say it's pretty good. Sheikh, and I think I would probably like that. Sheikh, because I like birds or whatever. Of course, I told you how her vaunted birding career that she just had to get a whole brand new camera and everything else. So. And I said, yeah, you may. I said, it's a fine game. And I didn't tell her that I didn't really, particularly care for it or whatever. I said, well, maybe if I see you finally play Catan, I'll think about getting Wingspan. She's like, okay. She's like, well, maybe you come home this week or whatever, this weekend. She's like, well, we'll play Catan. I'm like, all right. I said, well, I'll hold my breath on that one since it doesn't seem to ever happen. But so anyway, so she's all hot and heavy now about Wingspan, and I'm thinking to myself, like, good God, I said, I need to find out who these influencers are and ask them to play some different games. And maybe pull out an Arkham game or a Cthulhu game, talk about how great those are. Please find something that, I mean, I'm not saying they're bad games, but find something that I'm interested in playing. I guess I should be happy that she's even interested in trying them. But again, I don't know, her sending me a link is about as close as I get to actually playing the game with her. So I think they do have a digital, don't they have an online version of Wingspan?
Yes, they do.
Just tell her to play that.
Yeah, it's interesting, with Catan, because Lel and I be going through our collection, and people know that I'm trying to downsize my collection. Mm-hmm. So I've got rid of all the easy ones, and Dean and I have the patron only thing of I take 2 games off my shelf that are still there, which are kind of on the fence, and we discuss them, and he makes the decision on that. I've also had Lella going through our games, and Lella's has a terrible memory for games, so we're having to play all these questionable ones. So all the games I have listed either haven't played. There's not that many in my collection I haven't played, but also the games that you would say they're okay. They're fun. They're not fantastic, but they're fun. So I want her to play them and say, should we keep them or should we let them go? And one game that I've had for a long time, which I've never played, because I won it at a convention many years ago, was a game called Guildhall. Mm. And this in particular was Guildhall Job Fair. So I'd never played it before.
Is this the one with or is Guildhall, isn't that the one with the guy with the pig?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the original one. Guildhall, the version I have is the job fair one. Exactly the same type of game, just a different set of cards, and the guy on the front isn't holding a pig. But it's, yes, if you know the pig guy, it's the base game. And the only reason why I bring it up, because you're talking about Catan, which is, you know, an old game. We both finished this and we both looked at each other and said, this design feels so old. And neither one of us was impressed with it. You look at Board Game Geek, it's rated like a 7 point something, like 7.1, 7.2 on Board Game Geek. So a lot of people think it's okay, but I'm kind of looking at it now going, this game would have been good when it came out in, you know, 2012, 2013. But now they've kind of taken this idea and, you know, we've played the reincarnations of it. You know, people have taken the idea and made it a more robust, more entertaining game. When I go back to the original, you're kind of going, this just doesn't work. It literally feels old. And we've been playing other games from, you know, around that same time frame, 2013, 2014, that still feel good. It's like, oh yeah, this is really good. But this one just felt old. And I'm wondering whether a game like Catan, whether, or for yourself, you haven't played Dominion.
Right.
You know, everybody says it's a classic game that you need to go play. And Guildhall is very highly, you know, reasonably highly thought of as well. But if you go back and play Dominion, are you going to have that same feeling I had with Guildhall? This game feels old. Like I've played the new version of it, or I always refer to as the deck building plus games, where there's deck building plus other things, because they realize that deck building is fine, but now people want more from it. And if you played the more from it, if you go back and play the original, are you going to have the same feeling I had with Guildhall, which is this feels old. This feels like version 1 of a game that I like the version 3 version of. Version 1 just doesn't do it for me.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, because I think, like, so for a game like Dominion, since I know Dominion has been out for a long time, perhaps, but I guess I would look at Dominion as it probably still would be a viable game for me to have, because again, I don't think Amy would be interested in playing a current deck builder that's got a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of things going on. I think a game like Dominion would be a perfect way to introduce deck building to her, and probably just enough of a game that she'd be content, you know, with playing it, as many people are. I mean, there's still tons of people that just, you know, they love playing Dominion because of the familiarity, and because they have so much stuff for it. I don't know. I mean, I also, you know, you talk about the game, does it feel old? I was bored, and I was going down a rabbit hole of looking at some games on GMT on their P500 list. And I saw a game, it's the second edition, second printing or whatever. And I was looking to see what changes they had made. And they announced, oh, we're making this change, you know, a couple different changes. I'm like, oh, well, I might back it, because I never had the original one. And this sounds like they've cleaned up a few things, and they're adding, you know, they're giving you an extra, you know, whatever, a couple extra scenarios, you know, that sort of thing. And it got me to thinking, at what point in time, if I owned the original version, would I feel like it's worthwhile for me to get the second edition and get rid of the first edition? And because I don't do that very often. To me, it's like, yeah, whatever. I have the second printing, or the first printing, and they're on printing number 4 and 5. And a lot of times there's no real change. Yeah, maybe they clean up a couple things, but if it's just cleaning up rules, I don't worry about it too much. But at, you know, what point in time do you feel like it makes sense for you to financially get the newer version? And I don't know if I mean, it's not the same thing talking about Catan and Dominion and all that, but I think it's just kind of where you feel like that game's going to fall in your collection, or in your rotation of getting played. I mean, for us, it doesn't, I mean, we don't really have a rotation. I mean, it's just, you know, try to get something new played, or, you know, or maybe play something that you enjoy, you know. But if you were really curating your collection down to 50 games or 100 games, you know, I guess that's a whole nother problem of, you know, how do you base keeping a game within your collection? How good does it have to be? Or is it just a nostalgia thing? Or I'm keeping this one because this is Lola's favorite game and she likes to play it, even though you hate to play it, that sort of thing. So I think it's interesting how within the hobby, there's so many different ways to approach not only your collection, but, you know, the games that your game rotation, but also, kind of how you feel about, yeah, I mean, I can replace this game with a slightly better version of it. I don't know. I mean, I know you don't do that. I mean, I can't imagine
No.
you've ever gone out and bought a second edition to a game
No,
just because it came out.
I've never bought a second edition of a game. Oh, I shouldn't say a second. I've never bought another edition of a game that I
Gotcha.
currently have.
Right.
And it's funny because the fixes that they sometimes do in the second edition. A perfect example is Evolution by North Star Games.
Mhm.
I have the original edition of Evolution, which I do not like. And there's a problem with the first edition. I forget what the actual problem is, but there's an actual problem to it that the second edition fixes. And you can actually get like a fix pack for it between edition 1 edition 2. I forget what the actual thing is. I'm thinking, what, I just don't like the game enough to bother. So even though it may fix the thing I didn't like about it, it's like, for me, it's I was going to say it's a one and done thing. If I don't like, if it's not, I don't like it the first pass, I'm never going to play it again. But Evolution, maybe it would fix the thing I didn't like about it, but I did try it a couple times and I didn't like it each time I played. So I don't have a real gumption to go off and play it. Now, if it was one of these games where there's one rule I didn't like, but even then, if there's just one rule I didn't like and you came out with a second edition rule book, I may play my first edition, if possible, with the second edition rules.
All right.
If it is a problem with a card, for example, like, oh, we realize this card's too powerful, or there's something broken on the card, and swap the cards out in the second edition, I may just say, oh, when this card comes up, this is what it actually means. So I wouldn't bother getting the second edition for it. Yeah, even if it's Trajan. I mean, my Trajan's falling apart because I've played it so much, and my edition is 10 years old now, I think. The only time I could see myself buying another edition of Trajan is when literally the board starts to fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, so the only game that I think, go out and replace it immediately after I play it is, so for like Arkham Horror, the living card game, if I buy a brand new booster to replay the same scenario every time, just because I want to have that fresh, crisp feeling, and it's just so good. So I feel it's worth it.
So I'd say I've never bought a newer edition. So what's your opinion of the deck building game when you go into the dungeon?
Clank?
No, the one that came out just after Dominion.
You go into the dungeon.
Yeah, and then Tom Vassell and Richard Launius did the epic Thunderstone.
Oh, Thunderstone.
Yeah. So Thunderstone 1 to Thunderstone 2 was a change, but it wasn't a drastic change. And I own Thunderstone second edition. Then Thunderstone 3 came out, which was the whole changing into a legacy game.
Okay.
So I own both Thunderstone 2 and Thunderstone 3 because I felt there was a big enough change. It fundamentally changed what that game was about. They still call it Thunderstone, but I felt there was a big enough change to justify that I have both editions. There's no reason for me to get rid of the second edition because that is a deck builder.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third edition is like a legacy campaign style game, even though they're both called Thunderstone.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, because it is fundamentally changed. I've never played it. The only Thunderstone I have is Thunderstone Quest.
Yeah, which is the Thunderstone 3.0.
Is that I don't see that as being a legacy game.
Well, sorry, not legacy. It's a campaign game.
Yeah. I've only played it a couple of times. I haven't played it in the campaign mode. It was one I was all excited about because I didn't back it. And then I played it at my local con. I'm like, that was kind of fun. And then, so I ended up buying it off of someone, in Shrink or whatever. And then the more I thought about the game I played at the con, I'm like, it was fun. I'm like, but I'm not really sure I should have bought it. I mean, because you can't, I don't think you can solo play it. But it was also one of those where the more I sat and thought about it, I'm like, there's some ways of really gaming the system in that game, because the guy who won, I don't really remember them going on a ton of quests.
Right.
They just were, I forget what they were doing. They were trading in resources or whatever they got. So, I mean, I just scratched the surface on playing it, but I did enjoy it, and I do like the idea of it. So yeah, I mean, I could see that. I just think it's few and far between as far as how many times a new edition actually changes a game enough to make it worthwhile of purchasing it if you already own it.
Because for me, if it is a second edition of a game, like you're talking about the GMT game, GMT is, they always have several printings of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be fundamentally changing the gameplay, or it's no longer the same game. So you're going to have like little tweaks and whatever else. And if they're just kind of like little tweaks to the game, like little changes to the rules, or, do option 3 before option 2 in the new version, those are easy enough that if you have edition 2, just play with edition 3 rules.
Yeah, I mean, most of their games are cleaning up, right? And they may add a couple of new things, but they're generally just like scenarios. They don't fundamentally change how the game plays. It's mainly cleaning up the rules. It's maybe giving you some errata counters that maybe were misprinted. But they also do that when they publish their magazine once a year. They'll put a bunch of errata counters and stuff in there too. I mean, you got to buy the magazine to get them. But then again, I mean, I'm sure I own plenty of GMT games where I don't even know that errata counters exist for it, because I haven't paid that much attention to it. I haven't played the game in forever to even worry about it. So I generally find out about that type of stuff if I get on the forums, because in the middle of gameplay, it's like I don't analyze it that closely to realize that, oh, this should be a 2 and says it's a 3 or whatever. Yes, I would agree. GMT doesn't fundamentally change their rules or how the game plays that often. But you do see, and then there are some games that are totally, I wouldn't say they're totally, but they are a stark difference. So, London second edition is vastly different than London.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how we got on that, but
we got talking about old games.
Oh yeah. So what does your shirt say? All I can say is this, or see, is this is my
t-shirt.
Oh.
No, it says, this is my maple syrup eating shirt. This was a gift from one of our listeners, Eric, a friend Eric there.
Oh yeah. I'm surprised it doesn't have a bib on it for your sloppy maple syrup. No. All right. Well, I know you've been busy and swamped with work. Have you got any games played since we last spoke?
Well, yes, actually, because we've been making a conscious effort to go through games that are on the borderline. I've actually played about 12, 13 games over the last week and a half.
Good for you.
So how many have you got played?
Well, I've been playing the same game for like 3 weeks now that I've had set up in my room. I didn't touch it for about a week because I just got swamped with work. So I'm trying to finish that one out so I can get it off the table. But I might get a game played. I'm hoping to get 1 or 2 games played when I'm home in a couple days. I'll be home for about 5 days. So I'm hoping I can at least get 1 or 2 games played. And then at the end of September, I'll actually be home for about 16 days.
Wow.
So I'm hoping at that point in time, I'll be able to definitely get a lot more games played. And that's also the time of Origins. And so I haven't canceled my hotel room yet for Origins. I have another buddy from Cincinnati who was asking if I was going. I'm like, well, so I haven't bought a ticket. I said, I have the hotel. I don't know. I said, I could go. I could not go. I don't really care, to be quite honest. So I said, I mean, I'm assuming it'll still be taking place. And then the following week, we are supposed to go to Geekway to the West. And that one, I'm definitely not going to that one because you had to order tickets and the tickets are done. But I think I got a notice on that one where Geekway to the West was they
rolled it back. You now have to have proof of vaccinations for that.
Yeah, I thought I couldn't remember. So you have to prove you're vaccinated, and I think you're still wearing masks.
I believe so, yeah.
So, which I mean, I don't care. That's fine either way. I mean, the thought of sitting around playing games all day wearing a mask doesn't necessarily thrill me to death because, I don't know how strictly it's enforced. I'm assuming you're allowed to take it off, take a drink. But but whatever. I'm not going because of that. I'm just not going because it didn't make any sense for
Yeah.
me to go by myself or whatever. So
Yeah, you and I had talked about going to Geekway to the West, like Origins and Geekway to the West, but I can't even go to the US. I technically I can fly down to the US.
yeah.
So I could go down, but then it's having to supply the vaccination status and having the negative COVID test, both coming into the US and coming back to Canada. And with what I've heard from the airlines, it's pretty, they don't have the staff. I was just reading an article today saying, we talked about the hospitality industry. I don't know what it's like down where you are in the southern US, but I know when we were on vacation up at our resort just north of Toronto, so many restaurants were saying we're not open because we don't have the staff. We don't have the staff. And the resort that we're staying at was also saying, please be kind to the staff because we don't have everybody back. So you may be here, but we're missing like the room cleaners. We're missing the frontline staff. We're missing some of the restaurant staff and whatever else. That now Air Canada, our national airline, has also said they're having problems filling jobs.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I'm not sure about the hospitality staff here because I don't know if they're understaffed by choice because they're still not coming in and cleaning your room every day. You have to sign up to have them do that,
right?
Which I get. That's fine. I mean, even before COVID, I didn't let them come in my room every day because I don't want to be bothered with it. I'd rather just do it myself. But going back to like your resort, I guess my thing about that would be, I understand you might be understaffed, but I'm paying full price. So you made the choice to reopen, but now you want me to now you're kind of saying to me, okay, now it's on you to be inconvenienced, but be nice about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's pretty petty to think that way, considering you're going on vacation, it's people's livelihoods and everything else. But again, it's like, well, then give me, knock something off the ticket.
What I'm surprised that you don't do is sign up for cleaning every day. Because I mean, at least when you're in your hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, when the cleaning lady comes in, tell her not to clean. You'll teach her the game very slowly. So every day him or her comes into the room, you can have them kind of do their side of the move, and then you can sit like for the next 23 hours trying to figure out your move is.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of it. I was thinking you were going to say just, have them come knock on the door, just say every day, say, I need paper towels, toilet paper, soap, shampoo, and then just stockpile it, box it all up, take it home with me. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Not sure how that would play out, trying to teach them a game. So they probably get freaked out when they'd come in and see all my lighting set up and everything else. Like, no, please
come on in. Let me turn on the lights. Click, click.
That's right. You sit here. Let me get this camera rolling. Yeah. There'll be every morning. There'll be a fight down in the employee lounge of who has to go up to Mr. Liggett's room.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, of all these 12 games that you got to play, why don't you share with us one of your plays?
Okay, so I have two to talk to.
Okay.
One because I was surprised Lella liked it, and one was from my shelf of shame.
Okay.
So we'll do the one Lella ended up liking. So if you've heard this podcast before, you've heard me talk about Rhine River Trade. We talked about the supply lines, the American Revolution, the Southern Strategy. People know how much I like logistics games. The whole of how am I going to get resource A from here down to here as most efficiently as possible, get the most points, etc. So a game that came out, when did it come out? It came out in 2018. So it's not that old, but it was a game from Rio Grande called Broadhorns, Early Trade on the Mississippi. It's not an overly heavy game. It lasts about an hour and a half. We played it with 2 players. It works at 2 players. We've also played it at 3 and 4 players earlier on, but it'd been a while since we played it. And it was one of these games that was kind of on I enjoy it. I'll leave it up to Lella to make the decision. So this is a game where you are merchants sending stuff down the Mississippi. So you start at St. Louis and you end up at New Orleans. And you're going to be putting out these tiles in the different cities down the Mississippi of basically what they want. You know, this city wants apples and they want pork and they want whiskey. This one wants flour and pork and hides. And most cities will also have well, you can buy hides here, but they cost $1 more than the market. So on the top of the board, there's a market for each of the different types of resources. And at the beginning of the game, you're going to put out basically to fill the market. The top level is going to be cost $3. The next level down is $2, and then the lowest level is $1. So whenever you buy a resource, you buy it at what the lowest is. And there's these actually nice little barrels that there are different colors that represent the different things. At St. Louis, you buy at the market rate. So if there are 4 flowers out there, one would be in the 3, one would be in the 2, and 2 would be in the 1 series. And I'd say I want to buy 3 of them. I buy 2 at $1, and then 1 at $2. I put them on my Broadhorn, so my kind of raft type thing. And you also have to buy your raft. At the beginning of the game, you get a free raft, but you can only hold, I think it's 3 items on it. Later on, you'll be able to buy larger rafts and where you can hold like 7 or 8 items on it. So you buy it, then you just go down the Mississippi. And of course, each raft has a different speed to it. And it's going to be how many spaces you move. I think there's 35 steps on the river. So the beginning raft can go very fast because it's small. It can go like 7 or 8 spots. You can stop wherever you want, but that's going to be an action to go into port. So you get 2 actions on your turn. You can move or go to port. During the port action, you can deliver the goods and get coins. You can buy more stuff. There's also passengers that you can pick up. And the passengers will start at different cities. And they will say, okay, pick me up here and drop me off here. And I'll give you this much money for it. When you reach the end of the river, you sell your raft and you move your basically your player marker back up to St. Louis, then you buy another raft and start again. So you're going to be doing this multiple times. You can never ever only have 1 raft on the river at one time, but you're going to keep on going up, all the way down, and you can stop whenever you want. You can get halfway through the river and say, I've delivered everything. I'm going to go back to the start again. The demands change throughout the game. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to be putting out a stack of city tiles on each city. I think there's 3. So when that top one is fully delivered, you remove it and then the next one, which means they'll want different things and they're going to be selling different items. One of the really neat things about this game is you actually go through seasons. And you start off in the winter. So there's winter, spring, summer, autumn, and then the game ends kind of next winter. But during each season, something different will happen. So if you're in springtime, the water's running quicker because of all the runoff of, the river is just faster. So everybody gets a +1 to their movement. In the summertime, you have a thing called spoilage. So at the end of your turn, you always have to draw a card. And that card is usually going to be, it could be another passenger, or it could be like a bonus. But some of them are called spoilage cards. And if you turn over a spoilage cards in the spring, it's going to say spoil pork. And everybody has to spoil their pork 1 step on their raft. Because every round that you're on the river, you have to spoil all your fresh stuff. So your flour, your pork, and your apples all kind of age. So you want to get them, if New Orleans wants apples and you pick apples up in St. Louis, you better be trucking it down there, else your apples are going to spoil by the time they get down there. Because every time on your turn, you have to spoil it, but also drawing these cards could force it to spoil again. That's in the springtime. In the summertime, when you do get a spoil card, everything that can spoil does spoil. So it may say spoil your apples, but in summertime, no, you got to spoil your flour, your apples, and your pork. In the fall, I don't think anything happens, and then the game ends in the wintertime. But the way that they track the time is when someone puts the last requirement on a city. So if the city wants apples, like 1 apple, 2 whiskeys, and a fur or a hide, when someone places the 4th barrel on the city and basically completes that tile, they're going to take one of the fresh goods and put it on the timer track. And each season requires 3 of those to be put on. So at the beginning, you're going to spend a long time in spring because you're trying to get the stuff down there. But then the game starts to really ramp up, because if you have multiple cities that just need 1 more barrel, then you could have you could be putting on a barrel on that timer track like once everybody's turn, because I could finish off one, then Dean can finish off one, then Lella can finish off one. So you're going to be putting these barrels, you're going to be racing through the bottom part of the game. I enjoy it. It's fairly light. It's a 2.8 on Board Game Geek for weight. And like I said, the game lasted 2 players. Lella and I were finished in just over an hour. And she ended up really, really enjoying this game. I think it's fine. I do enjoy it. I like the whole idea of logistics. For me, I like logistics that are a little more complicated than this, but she liked it because it wasn't that complicated. I want to deliver apples to, I forget what all the names are, but halfway down the river, I can pick up apples in St. Louis, and I can, in a turn or two, I could have them delivered. So there is logistics to it, making sure you can get the food where you want to. And you also have to be looking what other people are carrying. Like if Dean's ahead of me and he already has 2 apples on his boat and they need apples, they're going to be paying a lot for it. I'm pretty sure Dean's going to get there first to deliver apples. So what else do I need to put on my thing if I can't sell the apples? So that whole trying to figure out what other people are doing and can you get the resources to where you want them? Again, it's a simpler version of logistics, which I think if people are kind of on the fence of whether they like logistics games or not, Broadhorns is probably one you could try, because it's very, I'm not going to say it's an easy game, but quite often when logistics games, you're trying to figure out everything that could happen. Okay, so if I move it from A to B, and then can I somehow short circuit to get to D without going through C, and can I piggyback on someone else's? This is no. You're trying to get resource from point A to point B, and you can see exactly how you're going to do it. There's no alternate paths. There's no, there's not 50 different options of how to transport this stuff. You put it on your boat and you sail your boat down and deliver it. So I think that's why Lella enjoyed it. Like I said, this is a game that if someone was looking for a lighter game, this is one that I would, suggest bringing to the table. If they wanted a lighter logistics game, I'd say, hey, why don't you try Broadhorns? Because it is enjoyable. It's relatively easy to understand. There's not a lot of stuff that I have to explain rules wise. That you have 2 actions. You either move or you go to port and sell and buy. That's it. That's the entire game. And it's also a good length that you're not worried that, it's going to take forever to finish this game. It's a slow ramp up, and then it really starts to pick up speed near the end. And you have these really large, Broadhorns, that your rafts, but they move really slowly. And the last, your last 1 or 2 deliveries, if I see Dean has a bunch of apples, but he has a really slow boat, do I take the fastest boat that I can only carry 1 or 2 things and try and, zoom down and try and pass him to deliver it before he can get to it? So, like I said, we both enjoyed Broadhorn. So unfortunately, this game is not leaving my collection because Lella enjoyed it that much. And she said when we first sat down, she wasn't sure about it because it's not her style of game, but it was just the right weight for her that she was able to really enjoy the game, because it was just enough planning for her that it was right at the cusp of, if there's any more complications, she may not like it as much, but for her, it was like the Goldilocks game for her. It was just right.
Yeah. So Broadhorns is one of those games that I've always, since it came out, I've always been interested in playing it. So I'm glad to see that you're going to be keeping it. And I think, so looking at the description, it's push your luck and it's pick up and deliver. And I think you're right. There's obviously a place for that within the genre of logistics, supply and logistics. And I do like that because, not every time you sit down to play, that type of game, do you want to invest, 3 hours or invest the mental capacity to sit there and think things out. And again, it's one of those where, it's probably a great introductory level game for someone to see if they like that style. And it's pretty straightforward. You've got a few different resource types. You need, what the demand is for them. And then it just comes down to, the biggest thing you have to worry about, I guess you kind of have to decide, what type of boat you're going to use as far as capacity and speed. where you need to get to, and then just make the judgment of, am I going to be able to beat Graham there, or is Graham going to be typical Graham and try to, try to beat me there, and then, and sell his stuff before? Because I think you said, or maybe you didn't, but I'm assuming, if they want 3 apples and you sell the 3 apples, and that demand goes away, or does it just lower
Yep.
the price?
No,
or
it goes it goes away.
Yeah.
And I should also say, with the resources that you're buying, so maybe at the beginning with that little market, the beginning of everybody's turn, if there's less than 10 barrels in there, you draw more out of the bag. Okay. So sometimes you can have like really cheap flour, like you have three or 4 flowers there that are only $1. So it's like, okay, well, I wasn't planning to deliver flour, but I could load up on flour and just, make a huge profit down there. But New Orleans really wants apples, but apples are really expensive now. So I just go, do I do short little runs and deliver flour to like the next 3 towns and just say, that's it? I'm just going to sell my Broadhorn and start again.
All right. Or
do you take flour and then 1 apple and waste all your time going down to to New Orleans to deliver that, $4 apple or whatever it is? So I like that as well, that the market kind of fluctuates. And when you're buying good, it's like, well, okay, it's really, really cheap. I wasn't planning to deliver it, but I can make a couple bucks by just picking up and going to a town or 2 down and delivering it there. But then is someone going to beat me to where I really wanted to go? If I was holding on to those apples, A, are my apples going to last? And then B, if I do this little side delivery, it's going to make me a couple bucks, is someone going to beat me to the apple? So like I said, it's not overly complicated, but there are things you need to be looking at. It's not just on rote that, okay, I'm going to be doing this over and over again. Right. You do have to say, what do I need to pick up? What does Dean have on his boat? Where do I think he's going to deliver it to? And can I make a profit from buying it for $2 and I sell it for $3? Is that worth it? Well, it may be if you can complete off the requirements list. Like right. if you fill off the town, you can actually get a bonus for that.
Does the game scale? Like, do you know? So if you're playing at 3 or 4 players, are there more items in demand at each city?
No, the cities are set.
Okay.
And they're usually only looking for 3 to 4 things. The earlier towns, maybe actually the top towns closest to St. Louis, maybe only want 2 things. But the ones at the very bottom will usually want 4 things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've always been interested in playing it, so I guess I'm glad you're keeping it, even though I could have got a sheet. But yeah, I would definitely want to play this one for sure. Yeah. All right, so my first bite is a game that I had debated. I always say, well, I don't want to, I don't want to always be talking about war games on the podcast. But I also hear from, some people that, will make comments. And obviously when I look at their collections, they like war games too. So maybe I'm off I'm off base on that. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about this one, and it is a war game, but it's a light war game. And so that, to me, that's how I'm justifying talking about it, because it's only a 2.0 as far as weight. So it's playable by almost everybody. It is a light war game. It is called War Along the Great Lakes. It's put out by Worthington Publishing. It's a 1 to 2. Well, it says it's 1 to 2 players. It's a 2-player game because it's a block game, and it's so you're hiding. In a block war game, I can see my troops on my blocks, and I can't see my opponents. So it is really a 2-player game. They say you can play it 1 player. Now, I am playing it 1 player, so I guess maybe they're correct. But for most people, it's going to be a 2-player game. Luckily, because I have so much time in between turns and I can't remember anything, and I just spin my table around and roll my chair. So it works out okay. I mean, I have a general idea of stuff, but there are decoy blocks out there, which I don't even know why I put them out, but I don't remember where they're at on the board. So maybe they're right. Maybe it's a certain group of people that will play this solo. It's going to play about, well, the box says 90 minutes to 2 hours. I guess maybe that's accurate. The rules are not difficult at all. It's a pretty short rule book. It's got a fairly, well, there's a basic setup to the game where there are a couple blocks that have a couple troops that have to be in certain cities, and then the rest of them you can put anywhere as long as you follow the rule of there has to be at least, one troop in specific areas, but you can put whatever troops you want there. This is one where I think, I mean, you would probably like it because you like block war games. You like that hidden fog of war sort of thing. It's a pretty straightforward game. This is all about the part of the War of 1812 that takes place from basically Niagara, from like Buffalo to whatever Fort Niagara. I'm trying to think what's up. Was that Fort Erie way up top? So it's a pretty limited scope as far as what the game covers within the war. And I'd say maybe there's 20 blocks on each side. The thing I love the most about the game is I love the board. The map of this area is it's not hexes, it's point to point, but it's just like, very finely drawn roads. It looks very thematic. It looks like it would be from the period, and it is not like a bunch of woods, just a few trees here to represent, different areas. And other than that, it's a few cities, small towns, the victory points that they are worth. And then if you get to the areas where there's forts, there's a little diagram of the fort, and it tells you what its defense value is. Again, very simple, very straightforward game. Your blocks are going to tell you what your strengths are, and it's a typical block game where it's a step down. So as you take casualties, you're rotating the block. Very easy to read. The block's going to show you your step downs. It's going to show you the number of dice you're going to roll when you attack, and it's going to show you the morale. Other than that, that's, yes, it has, the unit that it is, but whatever. It doesn't truly matter. But if you're into that thing, then yes, it does. And then the combat's straightforward. You're rolling 6-sided dice. You're generally only hitting on 6s. Occasionally you may hit on 5s. The other thing I think is cool about this one is that you have this little battle board. So as you go into battle, the defender goes on one side, the attacker goes on the other. If you're an attacker and you are attacking across basically the Niagara, the river, when you set up your blocks, you set them in the little space down at the bottom that shows that you're going across the river. And so for the first round of battle, you're rolling one less die on each of your blocks. So it simulates the fact that you're kind of disordered, you don't have the cohesion that you would normally have. So it does reduce your firepower. And then the second round going forward, your blocks are then put up on the main battle line, and you're getting your full strength. So you have your main battle line area where you're rolling full strength dice. You have your attacking across the river area. You have a reserve area where you can put so if you go into battle, you can put your leader in there. You can, from what I remember, you can basically put whatever units you want in there. You put your decoys in there, you can, whatever. And then they're not going to fight. They're not going to give you any dice, but they also aren't going to take any hits as well. So it's a way of maybe saving some units that were, brought in, maybe they're a little under strength, but it also gives you a little bit of that fog of war because your opponent doesn't know, or are those just decoy units that they have in there because you don't have to show them, or are they maybe some Native American units that they have in there? There's different ways of playing it. And then of course you have your little fort area on there as well. And the forts, every fort on the board has a built-in garrison that will help defend it. And the number of dice they get is based off the value that's on the board. So straightforward, very simple. If I'd say there's a downside to the game or a negative to the game, I think it's only because of the scope of the game. Because you're playing in a very limited area, there's only a couple of effective ways to get across the Niagara if you're the Americans, or if you're the British and you want to go the other way. And so there can be some bottlenecks in the game. Like you pretty much know there's like 3 points. Where are they going to come from? And yes, you can see the blocks kind of massing at certain areas, but you don't necessarily know where those really good infantry units. Is it cavalry that isn't going to do much? Is it Native Americans that aren't going to do much? Are they decoy units? So there is some cat and mouse and some bluffing. But I think if you played it a lot, it would get pretty samey after a while. because there's no cards in it. There's no there's no real way of changing up a whole lot. There are a couple of naval units in it, which so you have at the south and the north, you have, I think it's Lake Ontario at the top and Lake Erie at the bottom, maybe. And at the beginning of your turn, you have a naval block in each one of those areas. Each person does. And on the naval block, there's 4 choices. It's supplies, meaning you're going to try to get extra supplies so you get more actions. There's transport. You can transport troops from one port to another. There's support, which means you're just going to try to give naval support to a military action, some bombardment. And then there's intercept. And intercept is, I'm going to play that because I want to intercept whatever your plan is. So you pick what it is, you hide it from your opponent, you then reveal it. If you picked transport and I picked intercept, then trying to think, it's not automatic, or is it automatic? I think it's automatic. I can't remember. Yeah, I might have to roll a die for it, but it's a very good chance that I'm going to stop you from doing what you're doing. If we both pick things that are not intercept, then they both automatically take place. And the supply is pretty important because you start each round at a certain number based off your nationality, and the only way to increase your amount of action points is to use the supply actions. So sometimes you're both going to use supply because you want it. Sometimes if I know you're going to use supply and it's more important to the Americans than it is to the British at times, I would just intercept you to prevent you from doing it, because everything you do, movement and fighting is going to cost you action points in the game. So again, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. I enjoy it. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be my go-to War of 1812 game, but if I was looking for a block war game that plays simply and relatively fast, I don't know, maybe 2 hours isn't what I would consider relatively fast, but it does a nice job. It's a nice production for sure. And my very first block war game I played was was it called War of 1812 or just 1812 by Columbia Games? And I think, well, maybe I just like that one more because of the nostalgia value. But this one, it's actually a trilogy. It's War Along the Great Lakes, War Along the Chesapeake, and War Along the Gulf Coast, all in the same series. And this is the only one I've played. I would think about playing the other games, but I'm not, I don't know. They're pretty expensive if you buy them direct, MSRP. And for what they give you, I'm not sure I would need to own all 3, but I have enjoyed this one. So that is War Along the Great Lakes by Worthington Publishing. If you're looking for a nice introductory style of war game, and I say war game, yes, it's a war, and yes, you're rolling some dice, but it's pretty simple. I mean, there's not a whole lot of rules overhead for this game.
Yeah, I like the idea of the block war games where with the Fog of War. I own 2 of them, which are was it War of the Roses and
was it Richard III?
Yes. So I own
Hammer of the Scots, right?
Yes, sorry, Hammer of the Scots, and then War of the Roses. Kind of one's War of the Roses, the sequel to Hammer of the Scots. So those are the 2 I own, which are block war games, and I quite enjoy them. I like the idea of you're putting your troops out, and you're not sure what the other person has. Like, you're pretty sure, okay, well, obviously they're going to be moving. Well, maybe not. They're maybe not going to move that guy. Or when you take damage, you're rotating the blocks. It's like, well, okay, well, do I risk putting out my really strong guy, but he's only got like 1 health left? Or do I try and make Dean think I'm putting out my strong guy when I'm really putting on a lesser guy? So I enjoy that, the Fog of War. So I would be interested in trying games like that, because I've only, like I said, I've only played 2 of them. So I need another simple one that I could play. So this one sounds kind of something I would enjoy as well.
Yeah, like I said, this one with the action points that you have to use in this to either move or to get reinforcements so you can build your strength back up. It really becomes one of those things of, so how are they going to use their action points? And to move across, depending on where you're at, if there's not a ford at the river, it costs you more action points to get across the river, because the Americans are generally always trying to get some sort of bridgehead across the Niagara. And, whereas the Britain starts out ahead in the game because of one of the forts they hold. Now, if they lose it, they're going to lose some points. But this game could vary. There's a turn track, and you're moving along, and then it starts getting to the point where you get to a certain point, and now you have to roll a sudden death die. And if you roll it, it automatically ends the war. So whoever's ahead at that time is going to win, or it could end. You could go all the way to the end of the track, and it ends up in a tie, basically, which I guess is more historically accurate, according to some revisionists that say they didn't lose the war. But I find that that's interesting. But it's also, again, it's the whole using of your command points, and then okay, well, I want to do this and this. I'm only going to get this is what I start out with. So do I want to use my Navy to get more supply or for supply so I get more command points? And if I do that, and he knows I'm going to do that, is he just going to intercept? So maybe I should do something else with my Navy. So again, it's that give and take, which makes it fun.
Okay, so we've been talking about two relatively lighter games. So I'm going to go one that is bigger and more complex than that. So my second First Bite is a game that I've owned for almost 8 years. I've never played. This is one called Patchistory.
Okay.
So Patchistory, each person represents a civilization that's going to go through history. So right from kind of early days, right up to the current time. And there is the reason why this is more complex is because there's a lot going on, and this would almost have benefited from someone coming in to kind of get rid of some stuff. Not that it's a bad game, but I'm going to give you a very brief overview of it, but realize that this rule book is a 13-page rule book for a Euro game with no pictures. So there is a lot going on in this game. Well, very few pictures, I should say. So each person has a board in front of them to track the resources. There's 8 different things you're tracking on your board. And you have 2 number tracks. One is a production track, and one is like a status track or something like that. So on your status track, you have your military strength, your military defense, how far your people can move, and how many political points you have. On the production track, you're going to have resources, which are coal or something like that, food, gold, and victory points. At the beginning of the game, you have a little cardboard tile, very almost like paper, in front of you that has 6 squares on it. You can start the game where everybody's the same, so everybody has the same 6 squares. Or you can play the other side, which is everybody kind of starts differently. We played everybody's different. That card will tell you what you're going to be generating. So it may have 2 food on it. So you put your yellow marker, which is your food, on the 2 on the production track. It may say you produce 1 gold. So you put your green thing, which represents money, on the 1 on the track. It could say that you have 1 military strength. So you put your red on 1 to show that you have 1 military strength. So whatever's on the card in front of you is what you have for the upcoming round. The game is played over 3 eras. Each era has 6 phases. 6 rounds, and each round has up to 7 phases. So you're going to run through all the phases for 5 rounds. At the end of the 5th round, you're then going to change eras. And at the end, you do something special at the end of each era. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to auction off tiles. So you're going to turn over, and this is the kind of the heart of the game, is you're going to be turning over the number of players' cards, 4x4 cards, 2x2 cards. So there's 4 squares on them. And those are going to give you different things. They could give you more money. They could give you more military. They could give you more food, whatever. So you're going to place 3 of these out on the table, but you're going to be alternating. So one side of these cards is more of the resource basic buildings. And the other side is going to be special buildings, or they could be people or monuments. So you could have Gandhi on there. You could have the Great Wall of China. You could have, just about any other wonder or historical person you can think of. Once those are laid out, everyone's going to bid on them. So first player can throw however many coins they want on one of the the cards. So you can put one, you can put whatever you want. Everybody has to be involved with the bidding. At the end of the auction round, everybody ends up with one tile. But let's say I put it on one card and Dean also wants that. So he puts two on it. Then Lela goes and she puts her one on the second tile. So both Dean and I are on the first, Lela's by herself on the second one. Comes around to me, Dean has outbid me. I can either add more money to my bid to try and outbid him, or I can move it and increase. So maybe I can move it to Lela's card and, you know, put 2 coins there, or I can put it on the third empty card. Let's say I decide to just up the bid. I bid 1, Dean bid 2, so I up it to now I'm 3. Goes around to Dean. He goes, okay, I'm going to go up to 4. Goes to Lela. She has an outbid. So she's kind of, she can't add any more tokens. She can't move her money. Her bidding is essentially done. Then it comes back to me, I outbid, then Dean outbids, and it comes back around to me. I'm like, okay, this is too expensive for me. I'm going to move. I have to move my entire stack. So let's say Dean outbid me to, he bid 9, I bid 8. So I now have 8 coins on this card. I have to take that 8 coins and move it somewhere else. So I could put it on the last empty card, but now I'm stuck paying 8 coins for that. I can't take any money away from that. Whatever money you bid will be the money you bid, even if I put it on Lela. Now it's 8-1 for Lela. So she might go, well, screw that. I'm just going to go over to the last card and take that one. So that bidding is interesting, because if you were outbid, it's not like you're taking your bid back and saying, I'm going to bid 1 over here. No, I take that entire 8 and move that 8 to one of the other 2 ones. So you can sometimes get in a bidding war and then lose out and realize you way overpaid for a tile. Once the tile is done, everybody's has got 1 tile. You're going to take it and you're going to, and this is the reason why it's called patch history, you're going to patch it into your current network. What that means is you either have to cover at least 1 square or have 1 square of the new tile covered. So you're kind of either sliding one underneath or putting one on top. You can't put adjacent to it. You have to be covering one or the other, either existing or the new one. If you cover up a production square, you no longer have that production. So every time you add a tile, you have to readjust your little tracking board of what you're getting. Once you've done that, you go into spending your political points. So that's one of the resources you're going to get. And there's a whole variety of things you can do with your political points. The first thing that everybody gets to decide to do is diplomacy. I can offer aid to somebody. So I can say, Dean, I think you're low on food, because all of your resources are behind your screen. So I don't know how much food, I don't know how much money you have, I don't know how many points you have, but I can say, I'm going to offer you 3 goods. I'm going to offer you 2 coins and a food. And you can say, okay, I'll take it, in which I get 5 victory points. Or you can say, no, I'm not going to take it. I still get 2 victory points. So if I offer aid, I'm always going to get victory points, but I could give you resources to get more. But that takes 2 of my production points, or my political points. When I played the game, my political points only ever got up to 5 or 6 at the maximum. So I could do that, but it's maybe not the best thing. If I have a large military and Dean doesn't have a large military, I can threaten Dean. And I can spend 3 of my political points to threaten you and say, Dean, give me 3 points, or give me 2 coins or 3 points. And I get to pick. I can say, give me 2 coins. So you have to give me 2 coins. There's nothing you can do about it. If I beat your military by at least 5, then that goes up. So instead of 2 points or 3 coins, now it's 4 and 5. So I can say, okay, give me 5 coins. If you don't have 5 coins, you give me as much as you can. So if you only have 3 behind your screen, you just give me the 3. There is so basically that's the political side. Then you get into the whole building, they call it a management thing. In between each player, there's going to be a trade route. So if the turn order is, let's say, me, Dean, Lela, there's a trade route between myself and Dean, and then one between Dean and Lela, and then one between Lela and myself. So it's kind of like a triangle. You can move one of your workers from your player board onto the trade route. You could birth a new worker, because on your board you have a little thing of descendants. So you start off with 8, and you hopefully will be able to get them on the board to get them on the trade routes. So birthing them is taking from your board onto your patches, then trade is taking from the patches onto the trade routes. So why would you want to have them on the patches? Well, some of the patches will have a little box on them. So this is a farm. So you get one food, but it's got a little special box on it that says you also get minerals, or they call them resources. They look like boulders. But because if you put a worker on that square, not only do you generate food automatically, now because there's a worker, you're going to be getting what's ever in that box. So quite a lot of the cards have these little boxes on them. So you're like, okay, well, I want to get people out. But the more people you have out, at the end of each round, you have to pay for the workers. You have to basically feed them. So you're trying to have this thing of spending these political points to maybe get more people, or maybe I want to open up a new trade route, or maybe I want to on some of your patch cards, you're going to have empty squares called wastelands. I can build on those wastelands as well. So I can maybe put another farm on a wasteland, or I can do what's called reclamation, which is taking wasteland tiles and putting them on top of usually water. Because once a water square goes on your board, you can never cover it and you can never slide anything underwater. So water is basically by itself. The only way to get rid of it is do the reclamation thing, which is going to be putting a wasteland over it, and then you can build on top of that. So you're going to be spending all your political points. Once that's done, you're then going to do movement. So whatever your movement is, you can move each of your workers either on your trade route or on your player board, your patch tiles up to that movement thing. Then you do production. So again, you look at all of your production circles, get all those resources behind your screen, and then you have to feed your workers. So that's kind of the 5 main phases that you're going to be doing every single round. In the 5th round, you have 2 more things, which is you have to pay for your heroes and your monuments. So each hero you have in your patchwork area is going to cost 2 foods. That would be like your Genghis Khan or your Gandhis or whatever. They need to be paid once an era. Each one of your wonders needs upkeep, so they require the black boulders. Once that's done, comes another very interesting aspect for the game. One of the things you can do with your political points is get voting cubes, which are white cubes, again, stored behind your board. At the beginning of the game, you are given 3, I forget what they're called. There's a special name for them, that once an era, you're going to look at your 3 cards you have in your hand, and those 3 cards are going to be how you want to score this era. So it could be have the most workers, have the most basic buildings, have the most Cs in your patch area, have the most coins, whatever. You're going to pick one of those, and you're going to play it face down on the table, and everyone's going to take one of their cards. Someone's going to take those cards, and they're going to shuffle them all up, and they're going to reveal them one at a time. So I reveal the most workers. We then all will take our white voting cubes from behind our screens into your hand and kind of hold them over. 1, 2, 3. You reveal how many votes you want to put to that voting thing. So you're going to do this for the 3 cards, or each player is going to play a card. I'm assuming this is the 3-player game. You're going to turn over the 3 cards that each one of us have put into the table. Each one of us has put 1 in. Whichever one has the least number of votes is discarded. The other 2 ones are then evaluated. They're worth the number of votes on the card. So if I put workers out and let's say it makes it through with 1 vote, whoever wins that is only going to get 1 point. But let's say someone else put coins, and let's say there were 10 votes on that, then the person who wins the coins is going to get 10 points. Second place will get half of that. So it's a really, really intriguing part when you're going, most of the times you can see whether you're going to win this or not. And hopefully you've been building up to be able to at least win the one that you know is going to be there. But it could be that maybe I didn't get a lot of vote cubes. Maybe I only got 1 vote cube during the round, during the era. So I put 1 vote cube on workers because I have a lot of workers. Well, Dean knows I have a lot of workers, so he's not going to bid on that. And Lela, she's got less workers than Dean, so she's not going to vote on that. So I have 1 vote on the workers. Well, Dean's one, he decides to put 2 votes on him, and Lela puts a vote on there. And let's say on Lela's, there's 4 votes. Well, my worker one only has 1 vote, so it's not going to be scoring. So yes, I had the most workers, but I didn't also spend the time to get the votes. it's really fascinating, that part, because you also do it one at a time. So you reveal the first one, everyone puts votes on it. You can no longer put any more votes on that. We now go into number 2. So if yours is the first one that's coming up, you don't know what the other 2 people have put in to vote for. So maybe you could score points later on. But if I spent all my votes on the one I knew I was going to score, and all of a sudden Dean turns over and it's coins, like, oh, damn it, I have a lot of coins here. Dean only puts 3 on it. It's only worth 3 points. Well, if I'd saved my vote cubes, I could make it, worth 10 points. So this whole kind of push and pull thing. Once that voting's done, all the voting cards are discarded. You get the next set of the next era cards, and you start again. You go through all the same steps again. It's an absolutely fascinating game that needed some trimming, because it's not smooth. Keeping track of what your production is a pain. Every single time you add a card, you almost have to recalculate what everything is, because you're covering up some squares, you're getting new squares. Quite often the heroes or the wonders will change based on what's on your board. Like I had one that was, I got an extra military strength for every 2 sets of wasteland that I had on my board. But then I had another wonder that said all my waters are both water and wastelands. So every time I'm adding something, it's okay. Not only do I get the production on the card, I'm also covering up some production. Now, does this change the number of wastelands I have? And does that change my, so you're having to kind of recalculate this every single round for every single era. And it becomes kind of cumbersome as it goes on.
So did you actually enjoy the game?
I did. We all really enjoyed it. And again, this is one that Lella really wants to keep, because she also really enjoyed it, because it is fascinating. That whole patch mechanism is great. But this was a game that came out in 2013, and it really needs to be streamlined a bit. I don't know what they would, the thing is, I don't know what they would get rid of. It just feels like there's a bit too much in this game, because we played a 3-player game. It was a learning game, but it took us over 3 hours. But I could see this game easily lasting 2 hours, even with people that know how to play, because there's just a lot going on. And you get to the point when, like, Jack was getting 8 or 9 political points. Well, each thing costs you 2 to 3 political points to do. Well, it's 1 to 3 political points. But there's an option of like 10 different things you could do. And they're all kind of intertwined. So, what are you going to do with all these points? You kind of sit there going, well, if I do this, I need to do this, but then I don't have enough political points. But maybe I can exchange some goods for other. So if I give up 1 wood, I can get 2 food, which allows me to put another person out to go on the trade routes. Oh, but that's not going to work, because I won't have enough money at the end of the round to pay for all the workers I have on there, because it gets significantly more expensive the more workers you have out. So it goes like 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 13, 17. You're getting down to that 13 and 17, you need to be producing an awful lot of food, or using your political points to convert one to the other. But then when you spend 1 political point, depending on what your travel is how many exchanges you can do. So like I said, there's just like one too many things that they kind of crammed into this game that needed to be streamlined. But overall, it is a really entertaining game. And at the end of it, we all said, we all really, really enjoyed it. We want to play again. It just feels a bit too long. And that's my biggest complaint, is it feels a bit too long. They needed someone to come in and say, get rid of these few rules.
So I remember when this game came out, and my initial thoughts on it then, I've never played it, but my initial thoughts on it then were, to me, it's just looking at it aesthetically and how it, graphically, how it's represented. It really turned me off. It just looks like a hot mess. And then I think it's a problem I have generally with civilization games in general, is I always feel a big disconnect when you're trying to do, from the dawn of civilization to, whatever. And then you've got all these different historical figures that are overlapping, or one person's pulling ahead. And I don't know if it does it in this game. It just kind of feels like that. That's the problem I have with like through the ages style of games. And when you were describing it, and all, I'm surprised you said you liked it, because as you were going on about it, in my mind, I'm like, God, this game just seems so overwrought with bookkeeping and upkeep that it's like it's. I don't know if they purposely did it just to like feel superior to other designers or game designs. I mean, in theory, this would be a great online game. Just make it a digital game where it does all the upkeep for you.
Yep.
That would be great. I don't know. I mean, I guess I would, based off of what you say and how much you like it, I'd be willing to try it. But if you had never said that, this would be a game that I would never give a second look to, just because visually I'm just turned off by it.
And I would say, if you do want to try the game with someone and if they have any inklings of analysis paralysis, this is not the game for you.
All right, I'm out then, because I know I have AP bad enough. So.
Because even when you're patching in era 1, the maximum size you can have is 5x5.
Mm-hmm.
And each thing you get is a 2x2 square. And you have to make sure that it's always pointing towards you. So the text on it, you always have to be legible. So you may buy it and say, oh, I can turn it this way. No, you can't turn it. It has to maintain that orientation.
All right.
And with the C thing of not being able to cover a C or, put something underneath the C, it's like you're trying to fit this into, okay, where can this go? And it takes a while.
Well, at least without being able to turn it, that should cut down on some of your AP, right? Because you only have so many choices at that point in time.
Yeah, but it's a lot. Since you can't turn it, you almost always have to give something up. So what do you give up? Because if you could turn it, because some of them, it could be that they're all on one side. Like there could be the 2 boxes on the bottom are your production and the other 2 are wasteland. Well, wasteland doesn't get you anything. So you want to cover up the wasteland. So it'd be easy if you could rotate it and put it in this way.
Well, sure.
But now you're 6 this way and you can't rotate the card. So you got to turn it this way. But to do it this way, it'd be 6 this way. So now I have to move it up and cover it. But
see, it's so thematic. It's those hard choices in history that have had to be decided by the leaders.
So my favorite thing with this game is I got Gandhi, and Gandhi is an entire square. He's 2x2. So you can never cover up. If you have something like that, if I covered any portion of Gandhi's square up, he no longer is active.
Okay.
So which means he had to cover up something on my board already. But if I threaten you, normally you do the threaten of, you look at your military strengths against each other. If you threaten with Gandhi, you have no military strength. I don't care whether you're up at 20. If Gandhi threatens you, you're down to 0, and I get the maximum rewards. And I was actually reading the back of the book, and they tell you why. This is because it's aid that can't be refused. So it's really not a threat. Is you're demanding aid and you can't refuse Gandhi. So you need to give him whatever he asks for.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, before I read this, like, yeah, I have Gandhi. Right. Gandhi's coming to threaten you. But so like I said, each wonder works slightly different.
Right.
And the heroes work different. So I was very heavily on the heroes and wonders. But that means it really affected my production. Right. I was not producing food. I wasn't producing very little money. So it was difficult for me to kind of get a lot of my workers out, because the trade routes give you resources every round because you need to be moving your person along the trade route. And the other thing I forgot to mention is when you reach the end of a trade route. So if I have my trade route between myself and Dean, when I get to the end, we get to decide whether we want to ally, which puts it's called an allied trade route, which is a different color, which is kind of better, or we could go to war. So we have 2 little tokens that have a red and blue side on. Blue is allied. So Dean takes 1, I take 1. We secretly pick which side we want, then we both reveal. If we both do blue, we can form an alliance, but we don't have to. But essentially nothing happens. If we say we want to go, if one of us says the red side, they're the aggressor. And my worker that was moving goes from negotiation into the war phase. Next round, Dean and I are going to war. And it's going to be your military versus other military. But if Dean does red and I do blue, I take my military strength and add my defense to it. If we both do red, then we both only compare our military. We ignore the defense. But you're also secretly allowed to add the black resource cubes to it before you fight. So I can see what your military is because it's on your board. And you can see what mine is. The thing is, I don't know how many black cubes you have behind your screen. So, then you reveal how many black cubes and you add the black cubes to your military strength. So when we reach the end and we're trying to decide whether we want to go to war or not, remembering how many black cubes you have behind your screen is almost impossible because there's many ways to get these black cubes. So I'm beating Dean by 3 military strength. Does he have 4 black cubes behind his thing? Do I want to go to war with him? And he's thinking the same thing to me. So that's interesting. But again, it's another thing that happens during the game. Does it need it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure which piece to remove. Like I said, there's a lot of things crammed into this game, which make it interesting, but it feels just a little too bloated for the game.
Well, I'll let you introduce this to Amy, and if she signs off on it, then I'll try it. But I don't know. It sounds interesting, but it sounds like it's more work than what the reward is. I could be wrong on that. I mean, I wouldn't turn down a play of it, but it could just be that Civ games are not my thing. I don't know.
Yeah, if the patching piece doesn't appeal to you, this game's not going to appeal to you.
I like that.
Yeah, it all revolves around that mechanism.
I don't dislike that because, what was it? Smartphone Inc. kind of has that same thing, but at a much smaller scale. I mean, yes, it changes what your resources are. This one just seems like every time you do it, you basically are like, okay, starting from left to right, let's calculate this out again.
Yeah.
And like I said, if it was a digital game and it did it all for you, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But having an app for the game wouldn't help you because you'd constantly just be spending all your time, updating the system. So
yeah, and the Civ theme, it is a Civ theme game, but you're collecting resources,
right?
And you have cards with special powers on them. It just so happens that they have people's faces on them.
Yeah, I mean, it could be set in space,
and
be doing the same thing.
Yeah. So that is Patchistory, put up by Dyneco Games, which is actually a Korean company. They produced an English version of it, but again, I think it's now out of print, which is unfortunate because I think it kind of came and went. And I think a lot of people were thinking the same thing I was. It feels like it just needed someone to come in and kind of trim it a bit to make it a little bit more manageable.
It's still very highly ranked. It's ranked 1251 overall on BGG. So, I mean, apparently people like it, but I don't know how many people are still playing it though. There's an awful lot of copies for sale on the aftermarket. So I don't know. All right, so that's going to finish up our first bite segment. We are going to do a top 5, and I thought for this one we would re-look at filler games. We did a top 5 list. I don't know. I think when Graham first joined the podcast, or maybe even before he officially joined the podcast, we did one about filler games, and that has always been one of our best downloaded episodes that we've done. And so it's been a while. It's been at least a few years, and quite frankly, we've played a lot more games and filler games during that time. So I don't remember exactly what my top 5 list was. I could probably guess. So I tried to do 5 different games. There might be one on here that was on the original one. I just don't remember. So when I approached my list, so sometimes filler games get a bad rap. People look down on what's just a filler game. So my approach to filler games are, yes, they play less than 30 minutes. And sometimes you're playing them because you're waiting for other players to finish their game. But sometimes you play a filler game at the end of the night when you still have the full complement of players, but you don't have enough time to play another full game, another hour game. So I tried to do my list with a combination of games that, yes, if you're waiting for more players, this is a good filler game. or if it's at the end of the night, this is a good filler game, or maybe the beginning of whatever. So that's kind of how I approached mine.
Yeah. And for myself, I did the same thing Dean did. I don't have my notes from what I suggested originally, but like Dean, I'm pretty sure I knew what I'd put on originally. I think I have 4 new games. One game has to be in my list for filler games, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So I'm assuming that's a duplicate from my first list, but the other 4, I'm almost positive they are new. I tried to do a wide variety of games too. So I have like party games, 2-player games, heavier games. So my list is kind of split up between what people might think as light disposable filler games, games that you really play just to fill the time because you got nothing else to do, to ones that are a little more meaty, but are still playable within the half-hour time frame.
Okay. All right, so I will go first. So my number 5 is a game that, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me, came out a couple years ago. It's basically, it's a dexterity game, but it's a filler dexterity game. And you can play it, I think base game plays up to 4 players. They have an expansion that has a 5th player to it. It's a cheap game, a good price point, and it's just silly fun. But the game is called The Table is Lava. And again, this is, you think of, it's such a simple concept. I can't believe no one did it, before the designer did it. Each player has a little set of meeples, and they have a hand of cards. And the center of the board, I think there's a base card that's out there that maybe has all 4 different color meeples on it. So everyone puts a meeple out there, and then you have in your hand, you have cards that basically have some land shapes on them, and you're flicking these cards out there. You're trying to knock other people's meeples off of the land portion of the cards, and trying to get them, basically into the water because the table is lava. And if you knock them off, then you take them off the board. If not, then you have basically where the card land is where it's going to stay, and it'll have icons on there of different colored meeples. Whichever icons are on there, I believe that meeple goes out onto the board. So it's been a while since I played, but I'm pretty sure that's how it is. So as the game progresses, you have all these, everyone's going to have all their different meeples out there. So you're constantly trying to knock your opponents off, and usually you end up knocking your own off in the process. And for such a simple game, it's a card flicking game. If you ever, flicked, baseball cards, trying to get them into the hat or whatever, or just card flicking in general, that's what it is. And I've seen the most athletic and skilled people I know totally miss the entire table while they're trying to do it. Maybe the air gets under it. You might want to wear safety goggles while you're playing it, because sometimes they go flying up into your face. Again, it plays 10 or 15 minutes, and it's just stupid fun. So that is my number 5. The Table is Lava.
Yep, I've played this once, twice, I think.
Yeah, we probably played it back to back, maybe.
Yeah, and my flicking skills are not that great. My cards tend to go, you get kind of really low on the table and think, okay, I'm just going to take Dean out from the corner, and your card goes right across the table.
Yeah, the type of playing surface does matter. I would recommend at least playing with something with like a tablecloth, because if you do it just on like a hard plastic surface like folding table, those things are going to go flying. And it's so funny because sometimes they'll go skipping off and flying, and other times you'll do it and it's so weak and it goes like 3 inches onto the table and just stops. It's like, okay, that didn't work out well. So all right.
Okay, so my number 5 is another card game. So I figured Dean started with the card game. I'll start with the card game. Mine is slightly different. This is called Paper Tales. This is a half-hour game that when you first read the rules and first time you play it, you'll think there's no way this is half an hour. The thing is it's only 4 turns. It's a card drafting game where you are building up your army to get resources to build buildings. It's a drafting game. Everybody's going to be dealt a certain number of cards. So at the beginning of the game, you're given a bunch of buildings. And the buildings will say you need this many resources to build it on level 1 and this many resources to build on building on level 2. You're going to be drafting the cards. Then you're going to be playing. So you're going to be drafting 5 cards, but you're only going to be playing 4 cards. 4 cards? I think it's 4 cards. and you're going to be placing them out in a 2x2 grid in front of you, which is your army. Then you're going to be comparing your army strength against the people to your left and to your right. And then whoever has the most, and you could also go for ties or like friendly ties, so you both win. You're going to be getting, I think they're called legacy points in this game, basically victory points. Then you're going to be able to see whether you can build buildings or upgrade your buildings. So some of your cards are going to be giving you resources, and quite often the cards are going to be playing off of each other. So, you know, this card may say for every type of this character you have, you're going to be getting maybe a food, or you're going to give military strength or wood or whatever it is. Then you're going to be building it. And the neatest thing about this game is at the end of the round, you put a life token on them or a death token. I'm not sure what they are, but any card that has a death token on it is removed from the game. And then you add death tokens to anything that's left. So your cards could only last for 2 rounds. And in a 4-round game, it's the whole puzzle of trying to get the people out that you need. Some of them, you can have more death tokens on them. Some of them are like, for every death token, the strength is increased. Okay, but that's the maximum of 1. But maybe another card you have allows you to put 2 death tokens on them on 1 round. So the strength is increased before they die. The whole idea of them dying is really intriguing, because you can't be, well, I'm going to have this card for the entire game, then he's going to trigger off this one, then, you know, this person's going to trigger off this woman and whatever else. I'm only going to be able to use this card maybe twice. So make sure that you're getting the best use out of them. And because of that, and because it's only 4 rounds, this means this game is 20 to 30 minutes. But it feels like a much larger game, really, really condensed into this very small, quick playing game. So time-wise, it's definitely a filler. Complexity-wise, it's slightly higher than Dean's Floor, this Floor is Lava. It's not hugely complex. It's not like you're going to spend 20 out of the 30 minutes looking at your cards going, oh, I don't know which one to play. They're basic cards. This one gives you 1 strength and 1 wood. If you also have the tavern built, then he may give you 2 wood, for example. Very basic combos. And because you're drafting, you're looking at the cards when you're drafting going, this one makes the most sense for what I have, or this is a really cool ability, I want to use it. But you're not going to be stuck with it for long. It is a game that you will probably play and then want to play again, because the card makeup is going to change. Because it's drafting, you never know what cards you're going to get. And it is quick. It is half an hour. And like I said, the first time you play it, you'll think that wasn't nearly long enough. But when you get into the mindset of doing a whole lot of stuff in a very short period of time, that's what Paper Tales does. So that is my number 5, Paper Tales.
Yeah, I haven't played that one. All right, so my number 4 is a game that it's a card game, and it's a 3 to 5 player game. So, you know, maybe that's one where you're at the end of the night, or, you know, you're waiting for that 4th player to show up for the game you're going to start. It's by a renowned designer. I mean, Graham hates him, but, you know, most people like this designer. But yeah, Graham's just Graham. But the game is called High Society. High Society by Reiner Knizia. Again, it's a card game. Everyone is going to start out with basically a deck of cards that represent the monetary values, and this is a bidding game. There's each turn there's going to be a work of art that's going to come out, and people are going to bid, and the work of arts are going to be worth a certain number of victory points. I don't know if they're victory points or dollar values or whatever they are, but you're trying to amass, you want to have the most victory points at the end of the game, or the highest art collection valued at the end of the game. But in this game, most of the works are positive. There are a couple that are negative values, so you're bidding to not have to take those. But for the most part, you're bidding to win that particular piece of art. The key to this game, or the twist on this game, is at the end of the game, yes, you might have the most valued collection of art. You have the most victory points, but if you have the least amount of money left, you're going to automatically be eliminated from the game. And for most people, this is a very simple concept.
I thought it was if you're the person who spent the most.
I think it's the least amount of money. I don't know. Hold on. You could be right. Or maybe we just
Or maybe we're just saying the same thing. Because you're saying
well,
have
I
the,
assume here if you spend the most, you probably have the least amount of money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the player with the least amount of money isn't even considered. So yes, I guess we were saying the same thing, just one of us in layman's terms. And again, this is probably why you lost when we played because I mean it's a simple concept, but Graham must have make it more complicated than everything else. And I did you even have any money left at the end of the game?
I was waiting to play my trader card.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or
So
my thief card.
yes. Again, it's a fun, it's a fast playing game, 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes at most. And it's one of those where, the game at the beginning is going, pretty good. And then all of a sudden you get to that point in time where people start realizing, I think I made a mistake because either you don't have enough money left to win to win the auctions to get the good pieces of art, or you don't have enough money to win and not take the negative cards. And I think there's a couple of cards that have like a special power ability to them as well. It's just a fun game. It's been out for, I think it came out in the 90s, maybe 80s, 90s. I think it came out in 95, 96, something like that. So it's been around a long time. It's probably been re-implemented into other stuff as well. But anyways, that is High Society by Reiner Knizia. I don't know who technically is printing it. I think it might be Osprey Games that's putting it out right now. Yeah. But it's had a lot of iterations. If you haven't ever played it, check it out. I mean, especially if you get 3 to 5 players, it's just fun.
And I think it's one of those games. It's better with the more players you have.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So my number 4 is a 2-player only game from 2020 called Stellar. So Stellar starts off the game, again, it's 2-player only, and you're going to be building a pyramid of cards in front of you, which represents a telescope. And there is a row of cards 1 through 5 listed across the top, that there's number cards 1 through 5, and underneath you're going to have cards revealed to fill up those spots. You start with a couple cards in your hand, and on your turn, you have to take one of the cards from the card row. So let's say I take the 3 card, put it in my hand. I then have to play a card from my hand. I'm either going to play it into my telescope area or the notebook across the bottom. If I play it into whichever one I play it into, and whatever card number I play, like let's say I play a 2 asteroid, I then have to play the 2 card from the card row to the opposite thing that I played it. So if I play the 2 into my telescope, I have to take the 2 card from the card row and put it in my notebook. If I play to my notebook, I take the card row from the card row and put it into my telescope. The idea of the game is you want to be getting large groups of the different celestial bodies. Like there's planets, there's asteroids, there's like space stations and stars and whatever, black holes. So you want to be grouping them all together on your board. You also want to have runs of cards in your notebook. So the ones in your notebook are going to be grouped. So you put all of the black holes here, you put all the planets here, you put all the stars here, and whatever else, because each one's going to be numbered 1 through 5, I believe. There's a special card that's 0/6, which is one of the asteroid cards, which can be the 6th one. And you want to be making sure that they're in runs. Because at the end of the game, to score points, you're going to say, we're going to score planets. Look at how many points you have on your planet cards in your telescope. So you're going to look at your largest group of planets, and each card is going to have a number of stars associated with it. And stars are victory points. So let's say there's 3 stars on my planets in total. I then look at my notebook and I look at my planets. I look at my largest run of cards. So again, I want to try and get 1 through 5. Let's say I had 2, 3, 4. Well, let's say I had 1 and then 3, 4, 5, for example. So my longest run is the 3, 4, 5, which is a run of 3 cards. So I take the largest run, which is 3, and multiply it by how many stars I have in my largest group of planets in my telescope, which is 3. I get 9 points from my planets. You do that for each of your each of the celestial bodies. Then, if I'm playing against Dean will do that. Then we look at majorities. So there's the top, middle, and bottom section of your telescope. And then whoever has the most stars in the bottom gets so many points. Whoever has the most stars in the middle gets so many points. Whoever gets the most stars in the top will get so many points. Add up all the points, and then you see who wins. I love the thought that you need to put into, if I take this card because I really want the number of it, right? Because let's say I had 2, 3, 4, 5 of planets, and there's a 2 planet out there. I really want to have that 2 planet in my notebook. So I put the 2 planet in my notebook, but now I have to take the number 2 card, so whichever in the 2 slot from the card row, and add it to my telescope. Maybe I don't really want to add that card. So do I wait? Maybe someone else will take, like maybe Dean will take that 2 card, so I can maybe play the 2 card on my next round. So you're kind of figuring out what card do you want to take, what card do you want to play, and then what card is going to trigger from the card row. And because you're having to always play opposite, so wherever you play your card, the opposite area is where you take the card and place it from the card row. So is that going to screw something up in wherever I'm going to place it? I really, really enjoyed that. And it says half an hour. Lyle and I usually play this in about 20 minutes. Again, it's a 2-player only game, playable in 20 minutes to half an hour. But it is a rather thinky game that you're trying to figure out the best way to do this, because you're doing the same thing every round. And I believe it's 11 rounds, I want to say, or 12 rounds. It's a limited number of rounds you're going to be playing. But then it's that whole, I really want this card, and I want to play this card out of my hand. So what does that give me from the card row? Or I want that one from the card row in my notebook. So if I play this card into my telescope, it will trigger that card to bring it down to my notebook. I enjoy that. I like that wherever you play one, the other one, it automatically has to get played. So like I said, 20 minutes, half an hour. This is put out again, 2020. So I believe it's still in print. It should be. It's from Renegade Games. So who knows? They tend to run through their prints fairly quickly and then just move on to the next thing. But this is one I really enjoyed. And again, it's not a really deep, like heavy game. It's rated a 2.1 on Board Game Geek, but it kind of gives you just enough that you're not going to be doing this while doing something else. You do need to be concentrating on it, but it's not too difficult that you're going to be sitting there for 15 minutes deciding what to do. So that is Stellar from 2020. That's my number 4 game.
All right. Very good. I haven't played that one either. So my number 3 is a game I know we've played. I think you own it. I don't know if you own it or not, but we played at a convention. So my number 3 is, I guess people say it's a party game. You can play it. I want to say minimum players, 3 players, goes up to 7. So it's probably more of an end of the night type of game when you just want to play something quick. But the game is called Just One. Just One is it's a clue giving game where, and the thing about this one is that you can kind of set the length of the game that you want to play. You can do I don't know what it is, a 9 clue game or a higher amount, depending if you want to play a little longer. But one person chooses a card, and they are trying to pick, or they're trying to be able to deduce what the word is by the clues that are given by other people. So they'll say, okay, give me, clue number 3 or word number 3. Everyone looks at it. They write down a 1-word, just 1-word clue. And they then show them. So if there's 7 people playing, one person is going to be the guesser. The other 6 are going to write down clues. Once they've got their clues written down, they show them to each other. If there's any duplicates, those clues are eliminated. So maybe 2 people had the same. So now there's only going to be 4 clues left. They flip up their clues. The guesser is looking at those 4 clues and trying to piece together if there's any sort of cohesion amongst them. They could be totally out of left field on, and distracting and confusing to the person who's supposed to guess. But it's kind of interesting because either people can be on the same wavelength, or they can just be like not making the connection at all. And so if you're the one of the players writing the clue down, sometimes it's a very obvious clue, of what, okay, well, this makes sense. I'll do this. But do I want to do that because maybe someone else thinks the same thing? And then we're going to cancel each other out. And now the guesser is not going to get that clue at all. Or you overthink it, say, well, yeah, this is a perfect one, but gosh darn it, I know Amy's going to give that same clue because we've talked about this. So I don't give it. She doesn't give it because she thinks the same thing. And now we don't give that clue. So it's just a lot of fun. It's actually a little harder than what you would think. I mean, I think probably have lost more times than I've won the game. And again, it's you can play with any ages. I've played it with teenagers up to is geriatrics the right word? That's not the right word. So to old people, and it's always a fun time. So that is just one, and I want to say that's Asmodee. Repos, which might be Asmodee. I don't know. Anyways, that's my number 3, just one.
So my number 3 is my party game. Plays about 3 to 7 players. I think Dean and I played this at a convention. I'm not going to repeat everything that Dean said because my number 3 just happens to be just one.
All right.
Funny that we have the same game in the same spot on our list. So
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 2 is one that might have appeared on my list last time. I don't remember, probably did. And we've talked about it before, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But it's a nice little 2-player game. So if you want to play it at the beginning of the night when you're waiting for people, or if you just want a great 2-player game and, in between dinner and going to bed. It's a card game, it's a trick-taking game, and it's called Fox in the Forest. Fox in the Forest, put out by Renegade Games. Great 2-player trick-taking game. I like it because it does a couple things where the odd number cards, I think, have some sort of power to them, which changes gameplay up a little bit. But really, the thing I like the most about it is the scoring mechanism in this game. It's one where you don't want to win all the tricks because I don't think you get negative points. You just don't get any points. And you always want to fall somewhere in the middle. And the nice thing about the game is that you can really kind of screw your opponent over at the right time. And you can screw yourself over at the right time as well, by not thinking things out. It's so hard to pull off a good 2-player trick-taking game. And I love trick-taking games. And this is just one that I think this card game and then the game are probably the 2 card games that I tout more than anything else, because they're so simple, but they're just so much fun to play. So that is my number 2, just one. I'm sorry. That is my number 2, Fox in the Forest by Renegade Games.
I'm almost positive Fox in the Forest is on my original list, which is why it didn't make my list.
Yeah, I'm sure it was on mine too, but whatever.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was thinking about, well, maybe I should put Fox in the Forest Duet or Herloff. So Fox in the Forest Duet is a co-op trick-taking game as opposed to competitive like the original was. I don't like it nearly as much, so that didn't make my list. And then Herloff is a Viking-themed version of Fox in the Forest, which uses the same idea, but the biggest reason why I would say it doesn't belong on my list as a top 5 is because that my favorite part of Fox in the Forest is that greedy aspect to it. That if you get all of the tricks, then you get no points. And the other person does get some points. So that thing of trying to get you think I have a pretty weak hand, but I have 1 or 2 good cards. How can I make sure that Dean gets those good cards as well? And it's funny because you watch your opponent's face when you're getting to like trick 8 or 9, and they're like, oh crap, I've got nothing but really high cards left. What's going to happen? Yeah. Herloff doesn't have that. And I think that's the biggest thing that hurts that game. But it's almost like a variant to Fox in the Forest. If you've played Fox in the Forest and you're bored of it, but you really enjoy it, Herloff may be one that you want to try, but just be warned, it's not as good as Fox in the Forest. So my number 2 is another game it's a 30-minute game. It's not a 15 to 30-minute game. This is a 30-minute game. This game came out in 2014. And it's called Medieval Academy. This is a game that there was a lot of buzz when it was first put out by Blue Cocker Games, which is the version I have. It was then reprinted for North America by Yellow. Exactly the same game. but it didn't seem to get near the same buzz as when yellow put it out. You're going to be putting out 6 tiles in the middle of the board, which all have tracks on them. Each person has a little marker on the track, and it's another drafting game. You're going to be drafting 5 cards. You're going to be playing 4 out of the 5 in order, and all the cards are going to be move three spaces up on this track, or move 2 spaces up on this track, or 5 spaces up on this track. Once everybody has played their cards, you're going to then score each of the different 6 cards. And I believe when you finish scoring them, you then reset. I think half of the cards get reset, and some of them are continuations. You do this over a couple turns. I forget how many turns are 3 turns, 4 turns, something like that. And you're going to be doing this each round. And so it's the drafting, playing of the cards, and then moving your pieces. If you move and you move onto the same spot where someone also is, so both of you share the same spot, you put yours on top of it. So whoever the last person is to move on to the space, essentially is going to be the tiebreaker. So if it's Lella on top, then me in the middle and Dean on the bottom, Lella would get the most points, I would get the second, Dean would get the third, if we're all tied for first place. So when you play your cards is tricky too. Like if you only have a 2 or 3, well, maybe Dean also has a 2 or 3, so maybe I can go on top of him, but you can't wait too long. This is definitely a lighter game. This is what they consider like a family plus. So it's not exactly an intro, but it's easy enough to explain to and have the whole family play. It's a fun drafting game that is fairly short. The decisions you're making aren't overly difficult. You're not worrying about different, card combinations. You're just thinking, which track do I want to focus on? And because it's drafting, you look at your initial hand and think, oh, there's 2 5s here. I'm obviously going to take one of the 5s, so which 5 do I take? And if the 5 doesn't come around to me, then who took that 5? Did Dean take the 5 because he's sitting to my left? Or did he decide to focus on the pink track, for example, and he only wants pink cards? Because it's not brain burning by any means, but it's fun enough that you're going to be sit there playing your cards, moving your things, and basically vying for first place and all these different things. And you're done in half an hour. So that is my number 2, Medieval Academy.
Yeah. So I haven't played it, and I was looking at it, and it says I don't own it. And I'm 99% sure that I own this game, because when I finally unpack him, I'm going to look, but I'm almost positive I own this game. But yeah, I bought it back when it first came out because it was all the hype, and it was getting all types of buzz. But I bought it, and it's probably in shrink.
But I found it got an awful lot of buzz when it was done by Blue Cocker Games, and there was a relatively small print run. Then when Yellow reprinted it for the North American market, no one seemed to talk about it. It's like, oh, now it's widely available, we don't like it anymore. We only liked it when it was difficult to get an exclusive.
Right. And I probably have the yellow version, would be my guess.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah. Well, I just bought it and put it in the warehouse.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 1 is a game that Graham is probably going to have to help me out with, because his memory is much better than mine. But I'd say it plays 30 minutes. It may go over 30 minutes of time, but officially it plays 10 to 30 minutes. You can play it 2 to 5 players, and it's a little over a 2 for a weight. So it might be the heaviest game that I talk about. This is a game put out by Marimorph Games, and it's called the Shipwreck Arcana. So the Shipwreck Arcana, what I like about this game, and at first I wasn't even sure it was going to be a filler game by the definition with the time limits, but it is, so that's why it made the list. So in this game, it's a cooperative game, and there's going to be kind of a row of cards, a tableau of cards that's going to be eventually out on the center of the board. Each person is going to start with, I believe, 2 tiles. I think they call them doom tiles or fate tiles or something. And these tiles are just going to have numbers on them, 1 to 7, maybe 1 to 8. And what you're doing, so you're keeping these hidden from your cooperative players, your teammates. And it's a very limited communication style of game. I mean, yes, I guess you can talk at certain times, But for the most, I mean, you can kind of like try to puzzle things out. You just can't tell people obviously what your tiles are
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
The person placing the tile can't say anything, but everyone else can talk amongst themselves. Like, why did he do that?
Right. So in the center of the board, I said that there's going to be these cards that are going to be played out, and each of the cards is going to have a rule on it, and it could be, and it's basically it's giving you a rule of which of your tiles you can play on that card. And so as the more cards come out there, it gives you more options, but it's still sometimes difficult to be able to. I'm trying to think, is there in this one, is there, if you can't play a tile out there, you advance the little doom track or whatever, or something like that?
You can always play a tile. But I forget what advances the doom tracks because it's been a while since I played.
Yeah, I can't remember either. But so these cards are gonna have rules, and it may say if your basically if your fate tiles are exactly 2 over or 2 below this card number, you can play one of them out here. Or if the sum of them is divided by 3, you can play you play a doom tile. So the person that's playing the doom tiles is following those rules, and it's important. I guess you're giving a clue by where you're playing the tile, but sometimes you're giving just as much information by where you're not placing a tile out there as well. I find it very fascinating. I will say that the biggest downside to this game is if you have anyone in your group who doesn't read a card correctly. Well, I'm just saying, because I mean, it can really impact. I mean, so you really have to take your time to read the cards. And sometimes, when you're not the clue giver and you're discussing amongst your teammates, one person may say, well, this says this, and the person, no, it says this. And then you're like, oh crap, I didn't realize that when I was playing, my tile or whatever the case may be. It's not a hard game, but it's a game where you have to pay attention to details.
Yeah. And you're right, because I know when you're playing that game, you as the clue giver have to think about the clues you're not giving as well.
Right.
So if you have, because you always have to play one of your tiles. And let's say there was something that said both of your tiles are even. So that's one of the cards. The other one is going to be the sum is equal to 6, for example. And I put down a 2 on the sum is equal to 6. Or I put let's say I have a 2 and a 4 in my hand. So the sum is equal to 6 and they're both even. If I put my 2 on they're both even, the dean's going to say, well, obviously they don't equal 6 then. Because why wouldn't he put his 2 on the sum is equal to 6? Because that way we know he has a 4. So he either has another 2, but then there's another card that said both of your things are the same, for example. So why didn't you put it on that? So you're having to think what you're putting on. It's not just an automatic, oh, I'm going to put it here. It's going to be, if I put it here, they're going to think, why didn't I put it here? And how can I also use the information I'm not giving you to give you additional information on what I do have?
Yeah. And so you also have a set of tiles. I'm trying to, it's a different set of tiles. It's specific color to you.
Yes.
Where over the course of the game, you're going to be flipping them over, or
other people
flip them. Other people are going to flip them over.
Yeah. Because if I'm going to give you the clue, you could say, well, obviously he doesn't have this, so you're going to turn it over. So to kind of try and figure out to whittle down what you think I have.
And then ultimately, it's going to come down to someone's going to make a guess attempt at what they think you have.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's right and sometimes it's not. But I don't know. It reminds me a little bit of Cryptid from that standpoint of, there's rules and restrictions of this and this and this, but it's a co-op game and it plays fast. And we've played it on Tabletopia. We've played it in person. And I think we played on Tabletopia. We both immediately then backed it because it was coming out a new version, I think on Kickstarter. Maybe it was the original version on Kickstarter. And we both were just like, oh, this is such a cool game. So we both backed it. And I want to play it more. I haven't played it, well, probably since we played it maybe a Dice Tower con
Yeah.
last time, but it is. I think it's a. I don't know what it's ranked on BGG. In my opinion, I think it's underrated. I think it's such a. It's I would say it's a simple design, but it's there's no parts of it where I think, well, this, they should have thought this through a little better. I think it's very well done. So that was my number one, Shipwreck Arcana.
I enjoy when you finish the game and you reveal what the tile is, whether you got it, especially if you got it wrong. People, well, why the hell didn't you put it over here? You could, okay, right. Yeah. It's always one of those games when everybody has a perfect play for you after you've already played.
Right. Yeah. So it is ranked in the top 1,000 on BGG. So good for them.
So my number one game is also ranked within the top 1,000 games of all time on Board Game Geek. And this is the game that was on my list before. I'm almost positive it was on the list before. And I figured the amount that I play this game, it has to be on my filler list. This is a game called Quicks.
I was going to say that when you were talking about the amount you played it. So.
Yeah. To give you an example, within the last 2 months, Lel and I have played this game almost 40 times.
Wow.
So if you're talking most played games in my collection, Quicks is by far the most played games.
Get a life.
Well, and because we use it strictly as a filler game, and I'll give you a perfect example. We have dinner at the table every night. My son is the slowest eater on this planet. So Lel and I will finish eating, and we don't want to get up and just leave him by himself at the table. So we'll push our dishes aside and we'll grab Quicks, and we will have a game of Quicks waiting for him to finish. And because he's always the last one finishing, we're always playing Quicks while waiting for him because it's quick. It's very simple to play. So if you don't know Quicks, we've laminated our sheets, but you have a sheet in front of you that has 4 different colors on it. 2 of the colors go from low to high. The other 2 colors go from high to low. If you're the active player, you're going to roll 6 dice, 1 of each color and 2 white. Everyone around the table can use the 2 white dice. And all you're going to do is you're going to, whatever the combination of the white die, this is completely optional for everyone else. You can cross that off on your list on any color you want. You as the active player can take the pair of white dice, or you can take the white die plus one of the colored die and mark it on that colored row. As the active player, you have to take at least 1 number crossed off your board, but you always have to be going from left to right. You can never go back once there. So the yellow and red go from 2 to 12. The first one you mark off in yellow and red, you probably don't want it to be a 10. You want it to be really, really low. Because at the end of the game, when someone has locked off 2 rows, which is you have 5 crosses off and you roll a 12 for the top 2 rows or a 2 for the bottom 2 rows, you can lock it off and you actually take that die out. No one can score anymore for that color. When 2 of those rows are locked off, the game's over. Or if you can't take any die and you're the active player, if you can't take any combination, you put a cross on your board and it's going to be scored negative points. If someone gets 4 crosses, the game's also over. Then you just add up, depending on how many crosses you have on a row, will tell you how many points you get for it. The game says 15 minutes. Lel and I are usually done in 10 to 15, but for me, this is the perfect filler. We both enjoy the game. It's super simple. Very little table space is needed. Each person just has a little card in front of them and you have 6 dice. That's all you need. You can literally take it to a restaurant with you and play it while you're waiting for your food. And because of how much I played it, I figured this has to be my number 1 filler game because this is my default go-to filler game every day for the last 2 months. So that is my number 1, Quicks. And this came out, it says 2012. I can't believe it's only 9 years old. It feels like a game that's been around forever, but it's put out by Game Right Games and ranked 792 overall. So obviously I'm not the only person that uses it as a frequent filler.
No, Quicks is a great game. I enjoy playing it. I don't play it as much as you do, but we like to engage in conversation with our children at the dinner table, not just shun them and make them feel, give them a complex about their eating habits. So,
well, it's funny because we started playing this, like I said, about 2 months ago while waiting for Gareth to finish dinner. And it's got to the point now when he now wants to play with us. So okay. Gareth, who's not a board gamer, will very happily sit down and play a round of Quicks with us after he's finished his meal. So,
he can't. if you guys were done and he still wanted to play, would you let him eat and play at the same time, or would that be too distracting? He has to finish his food before he plays.
He's got to finish his food before he plays.
No, that's good. I mean, I can just see your little centerpiece bowl, no apples, just quicks and a couple other little filler games.
Yeah.
Some dice and markers. So, all right. Well, very good. Well, I'll make sure if I ever come up to visit you that I eat fast. So I can play too. All right. So that's our top 5 filler games, a redo, a look back, a new list, whatever you want to call it, of games that play in less than 30 minutes, but are still great fun. And we're gonna wrap this one up. We do want to say, we'll mention it again. If you would like to contribute anything to episode number 100, we've heard from a few people. It could be, you can join us. We'll, if you want to join us for the recording of it, we'll give you the details of it. If you want to send in a recording, you can do that. If you just want to send an email, we'll read it. That's an option as well. But we thought we'd look for, well, you can really do whatever you want, but you could just say, hey, hi, whatever. Or if you want to give us I guess some feedback of a great game that we maybe suggested to you, or maybe a bad game where you hate us because of it. We've ruined your life. Yeah, whatever you want to do, it's all good. But we the more involvement, the better. But you can send us an email at boardgamebuffetpodcast@gmail.com, or Twitter at Board Game Chats, Facebook Board Game Buffet page. Graham, what's your email again?
Four corners of the, I had to think that for a second. Four corners of the board at gmail.com.
All right. So reach out to one of us and let us know. The sooner the better. I would say by
mid-September.
By September 15th, I guess would be the deadline, as far as, so we would know how to coordinate it or whatever. But we're quickly approaching numero uno. I don't know what the Spanish word is for it. But sure. But with that, I think we're going to wrap it up, unless you got anything else you want to add.
No, I think that's it. Want to thank our Patreon backers as usual. It means a lot to us. We are saving up to buy Dean a new laptop, because the last several times it's been quite an ordeal to get him up and running on his old laptop.
Well, just because it takes about an hour to get everything to load up, I blame it on the hotel. It's got to be their fault. So anyways, but as always, please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See ya.
See ya.